Today we're talking about patch 5.6, the Inner Demon patch. This patch does, different from what many people expected, not come with a new guard, but it comes with a lot of guard and item changes that will definitely have their impact on the game in one way or another. First of all, we quickly look at the skins and then we move over to balance. So we had quite a few new skins in this patch. We have a Hell skin, or two Hell skins rather, obviously for the light and dark stance. Some Demon Angel theme looks pretty cool. Then we have an Anubis skin that actually gets a little wild with like rockets and a machine gun in his ultimate and whatnot. The effects are probably the crazy part. You have to get a lot of other skins, or bundles rather, to get this skin though. Then there is a Loki skin, not also surprising. Many people play Loki, he gets a lot of skins. Then there is a Chark skin. Unfortunately, this one doesn't look quite as good from the back, so you can't really tell much of what's going on. Then there is a, Aphrodite skin. That is very World of Warcraft Blood Elf based, basically. Then there is a Hercules skin, which is kind of, it's called Road Rebel, kind of Mad Max style with like his ultimate is a ball of smashed cars and stuff like that. And we have the gold skin for Chark, the new one, and the gold skin for Hercules. So those are the skins. Unfortunately, the card art is kind of weird nowadays in the patch notes. They have no way of showing them any smaller than this. So I can show you here as well, if you want to look at them. And I'm quickly going to go through the voice packs too. So in case you're wearing headphones, headset, whatever, turn down the volume a little bit. It could be loud. 3, 2, 1, go.
Heaven has sent me here, and I am here to—
Shut it, wench! Your insufferable babbling is annoying!
Roger, roger. We'll take out their units first and try and seize their base. Stand by.
Look into your heart and find the God within. It is your destiny.
Once I get inside their heads, it won't be long until they become entirely insane.
Yes, magic always comes with a price. But who listens to rules these days?
In the past, people took things for granted. And things they wasted, we kill each other for now.
Alright, there you go. Those are the voice packs. Pretty cool skins overall. A lot of effort put into those. Let's move on. We have a new game mode, a special mode, event mode once again. And this one is the Inner Demon Arena. It's basically one very changed arena in many, many ways. This one has a completely new environment with many features. There are water pools on the map that kill players if they stay in them too long. There are serpent demons on the map that spawn every 2 minutes, 3 of them. And if one team kills 2 of the 3, they get a Titan Juggernaut, which is basically like a normal Juggernaut or Siege minion in Arena, but it will attack anyone who attacks it. Then there are demon jungle buffs. These last 60 seconds instead of 120, but have powerful effects. So that demon buff gives 20% movement speed and power. The blue demon buff gives 10% damage mitigation in addition to the cooldown reduction and mana. And the purple one gives haste in addition to the basic attack, power, and attack speed. So quite a few crazy things there, especially haste coming back for ADCs that way as well. Quite interesting. Should probably be fun. Should be a very wild mode with a lot of kills from what I expect so far. The bonus round also returns. This one is a 5v5 death match at the end of the game. And there are some changes to how the arena works. There's a different respawn time, or just some adjustments to make it a little bit less annoying, basically. And there is feedback for the tickets that you're on, a visual feedback. And there are portal animations where the minions walk directly into the portal instead of making it a bit more confusing where you're not sure if you can still hit them. So quite a few things there, and along with that comes a bundle, the Inner Demon bundle with Inner Demon Hell, the Inner Demon Pedestal, then the Inner Demon Jump Stamp, the Inner Demon Level Up, we got all of that, and you get a Season 5 gold key, and you get bonus points earned from the adventure as well. So the gold key can be, I think, for the Aphrodite skin, and I think the other one, as far as I know, if it's not later listed, should probably be the Loki, not 100% sure on that one. The God selection has a visual redesign. The screen has new lighting and environment art, which it now conveys which side you're on, Order and Chaos. There is also a new customizable item. This is death marks. Now, if you kill someone on the map, it can leave a death mark on the ground if you have this equipped. And there are different ones: a kill face death mark, a rip death mark, and a skull death mark. So if you like that kind of stuff, you can splatter the map with paint of kills. Then there is the turn-up bundle. Okay, I was wrong about the gold key already, because in the turn-up bundle is the Abyssal Executioner Chark skin and the Dashing Deceiver Loki skin. I have to check up there which one is in the gold chest then, otherwise. There's also the Dashing Deceiver Announcer pack along with that, the Raining Skulls Global Emote, an Enigma chest, and one of the Smite birthday presents for the Anubis skin. The Awesome chest gets some addition with Brimstone Beast, Camelzots, Brimstone Demon Thor, Grove Keeper Xing Tian, and Sweet Tooth Sol. Then there's some additions to Godlike chest and the Fantasy Points store, where we have now King Buckles, Marksman Ram, and Solstice Hell. And that brings us to the item balance. The first item being balanced is Rage. Rage has this kind of point where it's very good because it gives a lot of crit, but it's not rewarding enough compared to all the other items, especially with many items now having higher crit chances than before. It's like, why do I build Rage if I could just build, depending on Deathbringer Malice is usually more beneficial in many ways. So what gets changed? Rage gets 10% crit up front that it otherwise would have gotten at the end. So it will have a total of 40% crit chance, but now it has 30 from the start and then just stacks up less. Interesting. I think that could bring Rage back a little bit for certain guards. I think crazy amounts of crit chance can be had at this point, which is a bit scary to me. We'll see how that develops. I could imagine that making crit a bit more interesting in some regards. I'm not sure if it's enough to push over the meta again, depending on the guard maybe more. Soul Gem gets a nerf, not that much of a surprise there. Bonus damage decreased from 40% to 30% of your magical power. It was just a bit crazy, and I was surprised it went through like that in the first place. So a nerf for especially Noah, but also quite a few others, or many mages actually, that made use of Soul Gem in its current state. Warlock's Staff, another item that is very, very potent on mages. Still considered a bit too potent. It already had its first nerf in terms of the power. Now the health per stack is decreased from 4 to 3, meaning it now gives a total of 500 health instead of 600 health. I think that is understandable. I think Warlock's Staff would still be valued enough. The survivability is just very, very good, and it still has a lot of power. And with One of the Hoodie being out of the picture as a massive power boost, these like stacking items that give you a decent amount of power right off the bat are nice, and when you have a ton of health along with that, still very good. So I think Warlock Staff needed that nerf and is probably still good. Shield of Thorns, this relic and its upgrade have been quite potent since the later half of Season 4. We are happy to have relic diversity, but Thorns can be especially frustrating and hard to play around. We want to make sure that Damage Reflect feels like it has enough risk versus reward, and currently it's stacked on the reward side. Decreased amount of damage reflected from 50% to 40%, both on Shield of Thorns and the upgrade. It's interesting because Thorns has this history, Shield of the Underworld, blah, 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 back and forth, up and down. And right now, it's taken a lot of hits. With, for example, the fact that it's only a limited amount of damage that you can reflect and all that kind of stuff. And it even needs more nerfs. This is targeted at ADCs, basically. This is to give ADCs more of a chance to fight into it, because Thorns is an ADC counter primarily, even though it's also a very strong mage counter, or assassin counter for that matter. And I think it's interesting. I think the question is, how far can you go with Thorns before other items just become a lot more valuable and it's just not built anymore? And that's a gamble. That's a risk that every change to Thorns brings with itself. But I think this 10% is understandable so far. Then we have Hide of the Nemean Lion. Also, again, Hunters. Decreased physical protection from 80 to 70%, as the passive of this item is relatively strong, and it just has a lot of physical defense overall. So a little bit of a notch taken down here. And that's, again, something that mostly affects Hunters or maybe AA Assassins, because in this case, physicals are the only ones that really care about that. So again, a change I can understand in light of the current situation of Hunters. It's going to be interesting how far this can go before we see a flip of the meta again, basically. But we get other items seeing changes in return. And one of them is Celestial Helmet. Celestial Helm has not seen much use, but does the job very well. For mages that want a single item to help reduce their chances of being one-shot by enemy assassins, this is a great option. We're upping the protection slightly more to help draw attention to this item's core goal. Some weird sentence structure. But yeah, the interesting thing is I've never seen Celestial Helm on a mage, actually. I think it's something if anywhere, I would probably see it on a support. But well, increased physical protection from 30 to 40. It is an item that provides a lot in that regard. I think it won't change too much unless it gets a major spike in the SPL now. If it suddenly gets a lot more values by the pros, because the calculations turn out for them that the defense is very effective that way, then it could be picked up, but otherwise I think it just won't be picked up any more than before. Shogun's Kusari, on the other hand, is interesting. Shogun's Kusari has fallen out of favor due to past adjustments and the buffing of protection aura items. Want to make sure that supports have options to bolster their entire team either offensively or defensively. This item was a 100% must-have for most of Season 4, so being careful with our buff here. Making it strictly better for support players, but not as powerful aggressively, should make it an item option without putting it over the top. Now, I think this is interesting because I never really saw Shogun's Kusari as this must-have item, as this mandatory core item. Sure, there are certain guards that make great use of it, and it was very good for a while, but for example, there was a decent amount of the time in Season 4 where it was actually Genji's guard that was being built. And yeah, I never saw Shogun's Kusari as that absolutely outstanding #1 popular item next to items that were just, at that point of time, better in one way or another. Thebes or whatever, or even, well, Jade Amp, whatever. But this change is interesting. Increased magical protection from 40 to 50, but decreased passive attack speed from 25% to 20%. I think the 5%, sure, it matters across the whole team, but for the individual, you won't feel it that much, and not everyone makes the same use of attack speed, so that's fine. The question is if 10 extra attack speed 10 extra protection are enough to offset that. So I'm still not sure. I think that defensive choices will probably be preferred by most, and I've actually recently seen, for I think the first time, maybe I missed it before that, or one of the first few times at least, that the talisman, the name slips my mind right now, the talisman, the aggressive talisman aura item, was picked up by Jeff Hindler, and that I feel might be more potent than Shogun's at this point in time. Not in every situation, obviously, because Shogun's passive is always there, but it just doesn't feel like this item really pushes you forward enough in terms of benefits for it to be a primary pick. Still maybe as a situational outlier, but more of a niche case. Jade Emperor's Crown is being adjusted. For similar reasons to Shogun's, we want this item to be close choice between Sovereignty Hardwood and Gauntlet of Thebes, while also giving support players some additional tankiness. Increased physical protection from 50 to 60. This will be very interesting, because I know that when you compare the numbers of Sov and Jade Amp, it's always this like power struggle, this shifting back and forth, and towards the end of Season 4, we had Jade Amp like all the time, and I made some points why Sov was still good with its sustain, but it still wasn't as valued often, and then, yeah, well, things went from there. Sov got its changes, Jade Amp got its changes, and Sov became the dominant choice once again, and that's what we're seeing at the moment. But 10 protection between those two items can make a huge difference. I think in this case, Sov is probably still what I would value more, but Jade Amp is definitely more in the picture with subtle changes like this. Bulwark of Hope. This item has seen a long history in Smite, but with the creation of many new defensive items, it has mostly fallen out of use. This item selfish effect and stats didn't match the cost, so making it cheaper to help it better compare with similar items. Decreased cost from 2,550 to 2,400. And that is, I think, also interesting, because Bulwark of Hope, yes, it's not as valued as, anything that has another special effect. But the effect that Bulwark of Hope has is still great. That extra shield and the decent stats other than that are very good. And I think a slight price decrease like this really puts it more in the eye of solos and maybe even assassin players. Probably not so much supports, but this can possibly mean that Bulwark will see more play. I would not be surprised if this pushes Bulwark a little bit, even though it doesn't seem like the most drastic change. The item isn't bad in itself, and the survivability you get from it is great still. And with Urchin being a bit more wonky, survivability items, heavy survivability, are not as frequent. So I can imagine this actually doing something for the item. Pestilence has become one of the most commonly built tank items in the game. In many cases, this item will be built even when the enemy team does not have significant healing. We're increasing its cost to deter people from building this unless they really feel that the healing reduction is necessary. Increased cost from 2,150 to 2,250. Again, one of those items that has a lot of stats for what it offers outside of the anti-heal. So I think it's very reasonable, very understandable that we see a nerf here. It's not a crazy nerf. It's still much cheaper than many other items that have strong benefits. I think this is fine. I think with how often we just saw Pestilence basically just, you know, slap it on your solo build because you can't go wrong with it, even if it's just one person with a little bit of healing or lifesteal. I think this is a fair change. Rod of Asclepius. That's the other side of the spectrum. Healing items. Basically an item that has not been used. There was a lot of adjustment to anti-healing, but not really to healing. And, well, most healer gods are still performing quite well, but we want to give them more control over how much of a role healing will play in their games. And to do that, it gets an additional 15 power, which is not to be underestimated, but it's also not the cheapest item. And at the same time, it also gets bonus combat healing increased from 10% to 15%. So, more fighting with Asclepius for more healing, and more healing from the extra power. I think this is quite good. It's going to be interesting who really makes use of this, but I am sure there will be some guys that can make use of this, as I think there's already reason to put it into certain builds right now, even if you're not the healer, like even as a support or something like that. I think this item will have a decent showing, and maybe some guards along with it as well. That's yet to be determined. Toxic Blade. Toxic Blade was in a strange spot compared to the other anti-heal items. It provided the highest possible anti-heal, but had weak stats that didn't apply well to most guards. As we have done with other anti-healing items, we're shifting it to make it slightly more attractive to core builds. This will come at the cost of reduced effectiveness of its passive. Increased pen from 10 to 15. Reduced stack count on anti-healing from 3 stacks to 2 stacks, from 60% anti-heal to 40%. Increased stack duration from 5 to 8 seconds. Now, I'm not sure about this item. I think Toxic Blade just has these strange stats that make it generally a bit wonky to pick up. It never really gained its popularity for that reason, because most AA guards just are very, very DPS focused, are very much about that, and would rather build their own sustain, their own lifesteal, than take away the enemy's sustain, because typically it will end up more beneficial for you, because you don't need to stack it first or something like that, unless we talk about stacking items. And all that kind of factors in here. Like, if your enemy heals for, say Toxic Blade had the same stats as a lifesteal item. Let's just assume that for a second. But your enemy heals for whatever, 15% of their health. Or make it easier, 10% of their health. Then with anti-healing, in a direct trade, they would heal for now 6% of their health, but you wouldn't get any extra benefits. They would still heal for 6%, while you would heal for nothing. Or even if it was 80% anti-heal, they would still heal for 2% and you would heal for nothing. And that is the big problem. It's not really worth picking it up for trades. It's as long as the enemy has lifesteal, that is. It's only worth picking up to specifically counter healing characters. There aren't that many healing characters in Duo, basically. Not that many hunters that have healing. There are some, but not that many. Many more focused on lifesteal. And outside of that, you just have to find enough value to pick it up when you can have an assassin building Brawlers, you can have a mage building Divine, you can have a solo building Pestilence, and that value is just not there, and I don't think it's there now, unless I'm heavily underestimating the stats here. Daji. The target is small, but with a long range and could often get lost in the midst of combat. We're tweaking this visual effect to help Daji players choose the targets it intends to. Absolutely understandable, the target was sometimes weird, especially when there was abilities on the ground, so just, you know, a slight change here. Tyr. Tyr's allies should be able to follow up on his Fearless and generally combo with Tyr better than before. Tyr, well, I'm just going to read it. Targets will hit by Fearless no longer lose their hitbox while being pushed by Tyr and can be damaged. Very good. That was one of the most annoying things when you're playing with a Tyr and he just pushes them out of your damage basically, not because of the direction, but because he picks them away, makes them lose their hitbox. And that being fixed, I think, is a good change. Very, very good. Might lead to some strange interactions depending on how it works. I don't know what it would, for example, do for a Poseidon pull, if that would glitch out maybe, like Poseidon pool. But we'll have to see, or Hades or whatever. But either way, it's better that it deals damage, that you can damage at the same time. Janus, this is a visual change. Change the effects for the portal deploy to better match its actual deploy speed. It actually looks a little bit different. It's interesting, but it's definitely more clear than before. Zha and the player he has grabbed are now damageable upon landing. Rather than losing their collision, they gain player pass-through, and Zha gains CC immunity for the duration of their landing animations. This is basically so that if you crack someone when they come down from the sky, they actually get hit by it and don't get hit. But same thing for Zha too. The other thing, I think there was an additional change, which was related to how he damages. I don't know why it's not in here, but what I saw in the patch notes at least, and maybe it was changed, was that he now has a pick-up instance of damage, which is increased, and a drop damage of instance, which is increased, but the hit after the 3 crits in air, the 4th hit, or the 5th hit in the chain, basically, was removed. I don't know why it's not here. Well, that was changed as well, but it should be the same damage values overall. Unless maybe it's not in the fixes, maybe it's in the changes. Serqet, that's basically the same thing here. The player and her are now targetable when she pushes the target away. So no more damage immunity for her either. And yeah, that just makes it a bit more straightforward and don't gives you the, like, it's just the general removal of awkward immunity frames overall. And Hercules apparently had the same thing too, only that it's much shorter. I didn't know about this. Targets hit by driving strike no longer lose their hitbox while being pushed by Hercules and can be damaged. I feel like this one you will hardly know about because the push is so quick, but yeah. Got balance. Ares. No escape no longer requires line of sight to grab onto enemies. I think this will make for some funny plays through walls when people don't realize. You know, like somebody impales someone into a wall and then Ares on the other side and pulls them over. It's like, hey mate, how you doing? But that's it, mostly. Cerberus. This one is absolutely strange to me. So, in case you're unaware, right? I talked about Cerberus not too long ago. I said, he is just weird, he is clunky, I don't know how good he is, but he is strange. Since then, we've seen him played in the SPL all the time, because he is weird and clunky, but he's also very effective at certain things, namely his 2 with the protection shred, which allows him to then deal massive amounts of damage with his 1, which leads to him taking out carries almost on his own, while also still having an AoE ultimate that can take targets to the skies. So he's doing well for himself on a competitive level. I don't think it reflects that much on other levels of play, but the changes are odd either way. They're good in one way, but strange in another. So, Paralyzing Spit. This ability now goes through walls. Would say that's a good thing generally because it was annoying that it could be so easily blocked off by a wall. The ability has had numerous adjustments to better reflect the targeter. Players should now notice this ability feels more accurate to the FX and the targeter. Oh my god, they made it easier. I think it's good they made it easier. I think it was clunky before. Just situations where you thought you hit but you didn't and all that kind of stuff. The radius of each projectile has been increased from 3 to 3.5. Also making it easier to hit. The stun from this ability is now subject to diminishing returns, also good, so it doesn't stun you for too long. The strange thing is, it is now easier to hit in many ways, but there is no nerf to the damage. And there's no nerf to the 2 either. And I think either the protection reduction or some of this damage has to go when it's easier to hit and hittable through walls. Like, sure, there's a nerf to the CC here, which can affect you when you use your ultimate first and then the Paralyzing Spit. But overall, it's not as much of a nerf as this is like massive buffs. And if you hear the rest of the things here, then you have Soul Expulsion, increased range from 50 to 55. Also nice because it makes it less clunky, but it's also a buff. Stygian Torment no longer requires line of sight to afflict enemies. Doesn't matter as much apparently because you can't throw enemies through walls, you can just lock them in place for a bit. But it's still a buff, right? You have all these buffs. This is a whole list of buffs with one nerf in return for a god that on a competitive level is performing very, very well. And I do believe that, you know, you have to keep the balance between competitive and casual, but I think exactly that is achieved here by making the targeters better and making the ability better to hit. And that's the point where I think it needs needs other nerfs to compensate for it. And that's just very, very strange to me. So I think Cerberus is now top tier. If he wasn't before, this is crazy. Well, moving on, Hell. Hell basically just gets new icons for her abilities. Updated passive meter, allowing Hell players to see their cooldowns of the opposite stance, so basically like RDO. And also, she will now fire her abilities from center and not offset. You know, like before she threw them slightly from the side. Now it's just straight from the center. Should feel more accurate. Good. Now, Zha, okay, the other change is actually here. Sorry, I talked about that before in the fixes section. Remove the damaging hit as the enemy guard begins to fall, and instead increase the initial and landing damage from 60 to 220, plus 50% scaling, to 280 to 280, plus 65% of your scaling. I think it should be the same damage numbers, because it's just like a strange number of hits. If it's gonna do that much, who knows? It says, this both makes this damage occur at times that make sense, but also means ulting into a target that beats will still deal a bit more damage to the target. That's the only buff in this, that you have this a little bit of initial dash damage that you will get anyways, regardless of them beating or not. Nemesis. We just said Nemesis in 5.4 with additional assassin-specific nerfs, Blink and Heartseeker, and one blah 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 blah. Few creatures is still too difficult to fight against. Divine Judgment decreased damage from 20 to 40 to 20 to 30% of the target's current health. Alright. Ouch. Another Nemesis nerf. She was overperforming, no doubt. She needed nerfs. But I feel like we haven't seen much of Midgardian Mail yet, which was buffed last patch, which is a heavy counter to Nemesis. And while not everyone can pick that up, I think that alone will actually take her down more than we've seen so far. I might be wrong. It might be something that is, you know, every Nemesis just blinks into the backline and they catch the kills anyways. But a 10% of the target's current health nerf from the ability takes away from her burst potential quite significantly. And while she's an AA burst guard kind of thing, most AA guards still aren't doing too hot, except for niche situations like Arachne in the SPL. Niche situations, again. And this will make things rough for Nemesis, I think. I think we will not see as much of her anymore because it's quite a heavy hit. Nua's, well, whatever. Shining Metal decreased stun duration from 1 to 1.5 seconds to 1 to 1.4 seconds. Whoa. That's pretty crazy. Almost not viable anymore. I'm just kidding, I don't think it's going to do anything noticeable for anyone. Sol, and particularly Mage ADC Sol, has been very impactful this split, pushing out even the top end of the Hunter pool. Her passive, when fully stacked, gives a large boost to her DPS that makes her very difficult to fight. We're toning this down, making fighting her more manageable. To make fighting her more manageable, I guess. Sol excels in the duo lane position, where players are getting less experience early on. While many guards can still make their impact by coming online in late game, Sol comes online much earlier due to her passive. The large boost to her DPS it provides makes her very difficult to fight. We're tuning this down. Wait, is this the same wording again? Whatever. Okay, you heard the nerf here. Unstable manifestation. Decreased bonus attack damage from 25% to 20%. Decreased attack speed from 1.2 to 1%. 30% to 25%. Decreased magical power bonus from 1% to 0.8%. 25% to 20%. I think those are reasonable nerfs. I think they won't destroy Sol, and I think they will give other hunters a bit more competing potential with her, which is understandable. So I'm fine with that. Good change. Terra! Crazy stuff. Terra is getting her root back. When the monolith is shattered, enemies are rooted. But Terra also gets a new ultimate. Terra channels her strength into the world around her. Around her means around her, not global. Buffing her allies and debuffing enemies for 10 seconds. Allies gain a 10% damage mitigation as well as a heal over time and protective stones that heal the ally if all 4 are activated. Enemies receive 10% more damage from all sources and harmful stones that damage the enemy if all 4 are activated. Stones are activated when an ally or enemy takes damage. Radius 55 feet, so that's the radius now. Heal over time, 5 up to 17 plus 2% of your magical power every 0.5 seconds for 10 seconds. That's actually a pretty solid heal. That goes up to 340 if I see that correctly. So, always depends a bit on when the first tick starts and whatnot, but definitely not a bad heal over time. And then on top of that, the heal goes from 100 to another 300, plus 30% of your magical power. So overall, we're looking at, I think, 700 plus healing, 800 healing, before anti-heal, obviously. We also have the damage part. Oh, and the damage mitigation, don't forget that, right? And the enemies taking 10% more damage is also very strong. I should not underrate 10% extra damage. Usually this is something that is bound to a single target effect when we have a damage increase against a target and not an AoE thing. Very, very scary. And then the damage 200 to 400 plus 60% of your magical power. That's some extra burst that you didn't have before as well. 90 seconds cooldown, 100 mana. Hi-Rez has already said, or it was said on Twitter by Hi-Rez employees rather, that this change is more to put her in a new place, give her a new pace of how she plays and everything, and less about this being the final numbers, but just making it easier to adjust her as well. And I think that's what's going to happen. I don't think that these numbers will last. I would be very surprised if they do. I think this ultimate seems very strong for any sort of siege situation, any sort of contesting objective situation, anything like that, especially because Terra also has no hard time getting between the allies and the enemies, just dashing right in, boom, and everyone's hit by it. The radius might be, something you have to get used to, but outside of that, she is scary, man. She is very scary now, and I think this change is a drastic buff, even though she loses a global ability, and I think we will see more of Terra, and I am very happy she got her root back, because that means I can actually enjoy playing her again. Thoth. Thoth is a god in an interesting position. His statistical performance is low at all levels of play, making him a character would be unlikely to nerf. However, his pick and ban rate performance in SPL matches is showing him to be a problematic god at that level and is limiting diversity. We're tackling his late game survivability due to evade and punish cooldown rules. Thoth can dash and then hold his CC shot for 5 seconds, allowing him to dash again quickly after using the stun when managed properly. In this patch, if Thoth uses to hold onto his stun, evade and punish will not go on cooldown. Thoth players will now need to choose between using the stun quickly to try and get the cooldown up quickly, or saving the stun at the risk of losing mobility. This ability will no longer begin its cooldown until Thoth fires the stunning projectile. I think that's a good change. That's a reasonable change. It's not a drastic change. It doesn't take away from its damage values. Thoth is still frustrating to play against, and yes, it's more shown on SPL level, but even overall, his performance as a god should not be undervalued, and his potential in the current meta. So I think this is a very good change, and that's going to be it for these patch notes. I know I was saying a rant video could also become a rant version of the patch notes. I think these patch notes are actually overall pretty good, so I will not do that because I probably don't have enough to rant about in this one, except for maybe Cerberus. And with that, thank you guys very much for watching. If you're new to the channel, feel free to hit the shop button and make the bell, it really helps me out. Other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth out. And this is the place where I have to make my own outro. And today I'm just gonna do the scream of agony that Thoth will do when he, gets his next nerf. And it kind of goes like this. You're welcome. You can meme that now.